So, you want to improve yourself.
To infinity and beyond!
Or you've been doing it already, but you feel stuck like a hamster in a wheel. What if I told you that the first and most important step is not what you think? We're constantly bombarded by advice.
Every day I demand more from myself than anybody else could possibly expect.
We chase a strategy after the other, hoping for a miracle transformation. And in all this chaos, there is a fundamental step that almost nobody talks about. I attended all sorts of events, read hundreds of books, and studied with some of the best coaches in the world. And I'll be sharing this idea today in under 5 minutes.
Now I'm here to save you.
So stay until the end. First of all, I'll start with what you actually don't need. The first thing you don't need is a big goal or vision. The problem with the self-improvement movement is we're learning to set unrealistic expectations. Many so-called gurus tell you to demonize the current version of yourself so that your future self will be better. And they tell you to have these big, audacious, hairy goals. That kind of sounds disgusting, by the way. So anyway, for some people that might work. Some people use those big, hairy, audacious goals as fuel to grow. But for so many of us, when we get over-invested in this future idea of how things should be, we kind of start thinking like we are not enough. And we won't ever be enough unless we achieve that goal. Don't get me wrong, I do have a big vision for myself. But having a big vision doesn't have to be the first step. It can backfire if you do it the wrong way, especially if you get too attached to it. So you don't really need a big vision to improve yourself. Another thing that a lot of gurus tell you you need is discipline. You don't need the discipline of a Spartan warrior to become better. And you don't need to have the best habits in the world. You don't really need to be part of the 5 a.m. club. So to make my point, let's look at some conventionally successful people. Let's start with Einstein. Einstein was a classic case of a heavy sleeper. It is said he slept over 10 hours per night. Not only that, but then he'd nap during the day. Reddit's co-founder uses his cat as an alarm clock. And I recently saw this video of Mark Manson.
I would wake up at about 11 a.m. and I'd get myself a Red Bull and some Reese's Cups. And then I would stay in bed for another 2 hours sitting on my laptop. I did this for 3 years and I built a 6-figure business in my mid-20s doing it.
So forget about hairy goals and forget about waking up before the birds. I think there's a much more powerful first step, which is understanding your experience. What do you mean by that? Okay, so imagine a puzzle with 10,000 pieces. Each piece represents a different thought or feeling. We've been taught to approach self-improvement by starting with the first piece and then trying to figure out how the rest of the pieces will fit together. But it can be really overwhelming and confusing.
What do I do?
So imagine that instead of trying to solve the puzzle right away, you take your time to understand how it works. That allows you to start seeing patterns and make connections between the pieces.
Oh, good.
So remember what Einstein said. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. In a world flooded by advice and quick fixes, we've been taught to think about solutions right away without understanding the problem first. Understanding where your thoughts come from, where your emotions come from, and understanding that your experience can be improved in an instant. So it's actually quite simple. Okay, cool. So how does the mind work? Is this? Okay, cool. Your mind is like a projector in a movie theater. Every thought you have is like a scene in a movie playing on that projector. When you believe in those thoughts, the scene looks real. It feels like you're inside the movie. Truman wasn't aware he was in a movie set, so everything around him seemed very real.
Good morning!
Morning! Good morning!
But guess what? Those thoughts are just, well, thoughts. They're not true, they're not real, they basically only exist in your head. So a lot of what we usually try to do in self-improvement is we try to fight the villain in the movie.
I will do what I must.
Which is not real. It's just a movie in your head. What happens when you take your time to understand your experience is fighting the villain just stops making sense. It can't hurt you. It's not real. It's just a script, a story. The 10,000 pieces puzzle maybe becomes a 500 pieces puzzle. From that place, anything is just a lot easier. To quote an unlikely self-development guru, Taylor Swift, do not kill the part of you that is cringe, kill the part of you that cringes. So what is the most valuable thing you've learned in this video? Let me know in the comments below. And see you soon. Bye!
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.